Serious. What was the scariest paranormal activity experience you have ever had? Part 2. Please do like, share, and subscribe. I'm not a serious believer, but always thought the idea of the paranormal is interesting. One night, I was asleep in my room when I woke up face down in bed and I felt this presence standing over me, and I remember literally saying out loud, "Nope, I'm not turning over until this feeling goes away." It did after what seemed like an hour. Now, the way my room was set up, there was a short hallway, maybe 8 feet long, inside my room that led to an unfinished basement. No one had been down there in years, so I kept a few rolling racks of clothes there. After that feeling of something standing over me had left, I rolled over and peeked down that hallway, and there was just this dark shadow sitting next to the rolling racks by the door. Freaked me the hell out. I told my dad the next day, and he said that I wasn't the only person to see something, and that when my step-cousin had stayed in my room a few months earlier while I was away, she heard a baby crying. Never felt comfortable in that room again. I don't actually believe in anything paranormal, but I had an experience a few years ago that I've been unable to explain, and it still freaks me out. It's hard to explain if you haven't seen my house, but I'll give it a go. My kids are upstairs asleep. My husband is in our room on the other side of the house asleep. I am in the media room watching a movie on my TV. My husband and I are console gamers who won't play split screen, so we have 2 large flat screen TVs mounted to the wall next to each other. They take up the whole wall. Mine is on the right. When you come into the media room, the TVs are on the wall to the left. I'm sitting with my back to the door. The only door to the media room is off a narrow hallway and is the first door on the right when coming down the hall from the living room. There's a small lamp on in the living room, so there's ambient light from the hallway. My husband's TV is off, and there are no lights on in the media room, which means his TV is one big black reflective surface. I'm watching my show when I see a shadow reflected in my husband's TV that is large enough to be my 6'3" husband lean around and look in the media room door for a few seconds. When he doesn't say anything, I look around, but no one is there. I immediately get up and walk down the hall into the living room. No one is there. Go to the stairs and see that both of the children's doors are shut. I would have heard them on the stairs anyway. Go directly across the house to find my husband sound asleep. I search the entire house. All the doors and windows are locked, and the security system shows that not a one had been opened since late that afternoon. I still don't know what it was, but I get goosebumps every time I think about it. My husband's mom died when he was 11. One day, we were at his grandma's house, and everyone had always told me stories of them seeing his mom around the house after she died. I didn't believe it until this happened. We were downstairs, and I was about to head up to the bedroom to put my pajamas on. I turned the corner out of the living room, and I was at the bottom of the stairs when I saw someone walk past upstairs. She had long brown hair. The only people at the house at this time were myself, my husband, his grandma, and our infant daughter. I told him what I saw, and his grandma said, "Yeah, that's Lori." I didn't go upstairs to change for a few hours. I haven't had a scary experience, but I've had some unexplainable occurrences in the past year since my grandfather passed away, like my front door being flung wide open, the knob on the top of my fan being pushed down, my room being unbelievably cold on a 30-degree day. But my most recent was after I had a small argument with my grandmother over something, and I felt my head get shoved to the side while I was sitting down. The same type of movement your head would make if someone slapped you really hard. But there was no pain to go with it, just a sudden, uncontrollable jolt. I didn't know what to think of it, so I sat in silence for a solid 15 minutes before doing or saying anything. 6 years ago, when my uncle died of a stroke at 40-ish, he left behind 2 sons, aged 10 and 16, and his wife, my aunt. His death was so sudden and unexpected it left us all shocked. He was an amazing man, very humble and polite. He died in the hospital the same day he got in it. It never had a chance to say goodbye to his family. So, a couple of days after his funeral, my mother and I were spending time at my aunt's since she needed some support and company. My cousin, the 10-year-old, had just woken up from a dream and called her through. After a couple of minutes, she comes back to the living room crying, but obviously trying to hide it. She said that he had a dream in which he was playing his PS2 and his dad came through. He said, "Dad, what are you doing?" Because he knew that his dad had passed away a couple days back. My uncle replied, "I just came to ask you if I could go to sleep in your bed, son." To which my cousin replied, "Yeah, sure, Dad." Then he said, I covered him with my covers and turned off my PS2 so he can get some rest. And as I was walking through the door, I said, "Good night, Dad. I love you." He said that since he never had a chance to say goodbye to him, his dad came to visit him in the only way he could, through his dreams, to say his final goodbye. At the time I heard that story, I was 13 years old, but I remember exactly how it all happened, and it was a really heartbreaking and sad experience. Might not be as paranormal, but it definitely is something extraordinary. I love you, Uncle. You'll forever be remembered. Rest in peace. I'm a bit late, so I may be overlooked, but I do like to share this story because it gives me chills and goosebumps, and in a way it feels cool to share a story that can affect me like that. Feels important, I guess. When I was little, I absolutely hated thunderstorms. I'd be scared to death and would beg to sleep with my mom and dad. Sometimes I didn't want to wake them up, so I just tiptoed into their room and slept on the floor on my mom's side of the bed, and I felt safe knowing she was right there. My parents' room was directly across a long hallway from my room, so it was just a long straight line past the bathroom to get there. One night, when I was probably about 8 or 9, there was a very bad storm, and I was woken up by thunder and immediately got out of bed and decided I was going to sleep with my mom and dad, and so I crept out of my room and tiptoed down the hallway. I probably got about 3 feet from my parents' door when I saw 3 very small apparitions in front of my parents' door. And this sounds nuts, but they were lion-like creatures with sharp teeth and really cloudy eyes. They were snarling at me and guarding my parents' doorway, and I felt such intense fear that if I tried getting past them, something terrible would happen. So I ran back to my room and rode out the storm in my own bed. This happened a couple times that summer. I saw the little transparent creatures outside my parents' bedroom, and I never slept with them again. Eventually, I got older, completely forgot about that, and I never saw them as a teenager or an adult, and if I did recall it, I probably wrote it off as childhood imagination. But here's the part that gives me chills. Years later, when I was in high school, we had a family barbecue, and all my aunts and cousins were over, and the little cousins were playing hide and seek. My cousin Samantha, who was probably 8 at the time, came running outside crying hysterically, and we all asked her what was wrong. Her response almost made me throw up. She said she was hiding in my parents' room, and she got attacked by a little lion ghost. The adults all chuckled and told her to go sit down and relax, but I lost my fucking shit and went pale and had to go for a walk. I was on a middle school camping field trip to this little cabin grounds, not to mention that we Googled and found out it was a nudist campgrounds during the off-season, and that it was infested with stink bugs. In the night's first day, I woke up and saw a woman's hand extended to me with a sapphire ring on. I reached out to grab it, but someone snored and I quickly looked out of shock, turned back and saw a whole woman walk off out of the cabin. I somehow didn't care and fell back asleep. The final night, we did a bonfire, and some dude said that the place was haunted, and people have talked about seeing a woman with a sapphire ring at night, as well as a few other people. Because I didn't know about that story till after the experience, and I know I didn't dream it because of that snore, that's the only instance where I think I really experienced paranormal. When I was about 8 years old, I was in the shower, and I started hearing my name being called, which sounded like, "Mom, Mom," so I went out and asked what she needed, and she said she didn't say anything. We were the only ones in the house. About a day later, I was sleeping, and for some reason I woke up and looked at the side of my bed where I saw a sad, floating head transparent for I'd say a second or two, and then I sprinted away, calling my parents only to return to nothing. Days after, I would experience tapping on the windows, cupboard doors open that were closed, and one day it all just seemed to stop. When I was about 19, I was still living with my parents in their basement. I began experiencing sleep paralysis, but had no idea what it was until it came up in a doctor's appointment. The first incident was terrifying. Something was scurrying around my room as I laid there. The rest of the episodes were all the same. I would wake up and I could hear my mother talking to me, indescribably, and then I would feel as though I was being dragged toward the fireplace. One time I finally woke up and I looked over at the fireplace and the doors were wide open. This is more of a decorative fireplace, and we had lived there for years and never used it, let alone touched it. I would have chats with my mom about how I felt the basement was haunted, and one night she responded with, If it were haunted, the dog would sense it and act weird or bark. At that moment, my dog ran to the top of the stairs and started growling. We looked at each other and shook it off with an uncomfortable laugh. Finally, a year later, we were moving out, and as I was helping my dad clean our storage room, the room behind the fireplace, it was stacked high with boxes. When we were about done, my dad yells to me to come over. I walk over and he points out a red handprint on the wall. Not even thinking, I placed my hand up against it, and it was the exact same size. So weird. We had no explanation. Ever since we moved out, the sleep paralysis has ended. The scariest one I've ever had was about a year ago. This is 100% true. Even though that can be hard to believe a random stranger on the internet, but I swear it was. Bearing in mind, I don't really believe in paranormal stuff, but after this, it really got me thinking. One night during the summer, I was waiting on my sister coming home from work. She was bringing me home food from the place she worked and didn't finish till 1 a.m., so she didn't get home until nearly 2. She comes in, gives me my food, and then goes to bed because she's tired. So I went upstairs and browsed on my computer looking for Sims downloads. Yeah, I'm an adult who still plays The Sims from time to time, don't judge. Haha. I was weird because when I'm on my computer, I usually always have music playing in the background because I don't really like sitting in silence during the night. Not sure why. I've always felt perfectly safe in my house at any time of day or night. But as I was scrolling through, I heard a knock on my door and then my sister's voice say, "Can I come in?" Clear as day. I spun around so fast in my chair because my house is old, so you can always hear when people come upstairs, and the hallway light would have been on. But I didn't hear anyone come up, and the light was turned off, which is why I turned around so fast. My sister's bedroom was downstairs, and my parents were in bed sleeping. I texted her right away asking if she had come upstairs or shouted from her room or anything that would make sense of it, but she hadn't. We were both so scared and didn't know what to do. I have text messages if anyone is interested in seeing me asking her. It really freaked me out, and at the time that happened, we'd had a few strange things happening in the house, but nothing as bad as that. And I'd also heard constant knocking and walking around coming from my attic, which no one else could hear. I recorded this since no one believed me. My dad even went up to check if birds had gotten in or if we had any traces of mice or anything, and there was nothing. But as soon as I started showing people the recording of the noises in the attic, it stopped all of a sudden. It was very creepy. Me and my brother shared a room and woke up one morning, and as we looked up, there was a woman in between the two beds staring out the window. Freaked, we legged it downstairs and described the mystery woman to our parents, and our mother disappears off and digs out a photo from storage. It was the spitting image of the woman. It was our grandmother who had passed away before we'd been born. She and our mother weren't close, so we'd never seen photos of her. We heard things intermittently, but didn't see her again. Maybe not all that scary, but it freaked me out at first. There are several ghost or shadow people in my house, but they're usually quite friendly. Never get too close and just kind of stare. But one evening, I was feeling really bad and was sitting on my bed crying. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a shadow standing in the usual spot looking at me, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I didn't realize when, but at some point it got closer to me and I could feel it sit down next to me. This had never happened before. They sometimes got a little closer, but never that close. And then I felt it caress my cheek. I've never felt them touch me, like this at least, and was extremely frightened because I had no idea what it was planning to do or if it would hurt me. But it just kind of lovingly caressed my face, and it felt like it wanted to calm me down and say, "It's all right," in a way. After I understood that, I actually calmed down, and it was really nice. Shortly after I calmed down, it disappeared. So, not all ghosts are scary and evil, and maybe they are just misunderstood sometimes. Not necessarily terrifying, but eerie, at least in the beginning. Was about 10, middle of the night. I woke up randomly, which isn't uncommon. Anyway, I opened my eyes and clear as day, I see a whitish figure standing over me watching me in bed. He was a boy, dressed in Revolutionary War attire, holding a musket or something. I blinked, he was gone. Now my family had just moved to the house a year or two prior. When I told my mother the story, she smiled. I thought she'd call me crazy or tell me I was having a nightmare, but no. She had seen him sitting in an old gold velvet chair we had in the living room. What's more, we had a lot of unexplained things going on in the house. My parents argued one morning about how my father's shoes were a mess in the closet. My dad came home from work that night and decided to organize them, only to find they had all been neatly lined up and stacked, with each shoelace tied to the next shoe. Also, we constantly find knots on all of our blinds. Shortly after seeing the figure, I learned that literally down the street from us was the site of an old Revolutionary War hospital. I've since moved out of my parents' house, but haven't had anything too crazy happen in years. My grandfather lived with us, but passed in 2008, just days after. Things were falling off my wall or shelves, and my TV turned itself on at one point. My mom was freaked, and I asked my grandfather to stop. Nothing happened since. I refer to the boy I saw as our Casper the Friendly Ghost. I truly do believe what I saw, and certainly don't mind him at all, lol. My family is old school Italian. We all live next to each other in homes our families have owned for close to 100 years. When my little cousins were kids, they'd play with the dark man in the basement. Whatever, we didn't think anything of it. Until one day, we were all going through old albums, and my aunt pulled out a picture of my bisnonno. That's the dark man, yeah. That was wild. My cousin's kids also had a similar experience with my grandfather, who I referred to above. Paranormal stuff follows us everywhere. My bisnonna was a medium, or so my family says. If that's true, I figure that explains it.